We are now live.
Good evening, everyone. We are the Historic Districts Review Board, and today is October the 8th, 2024, and the meeting is called to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Madam Chair Rios,
Here,
Vice Chair Guida,
Here.
Member Agla Madrano,
excused,
Member Benvenu,
excused,
Member Mather,
excused.
Member Degnan,
Here.
Member Bescheid,
Here.
and Vice Chair Guida.
Already said here, yes.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Changes to the agenda? Anyone?
Chair Rios, yes. Under new business, item C has been postponed, 2024-00913, 0 HDRB 925 Seca Masri. And then under item D, 2024-00912, HDRB 544 Canyon Road, no longer needs an exception.
It's not need an exception, is that what I heard?
Correct.
We'd moves to approve as amended.
Bescheid
Please.
seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Degnan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Bescheid. Madam Chair, the motion has passed.
Thank you. We have no minutes on this particular agenda, but we do have 4 findings of fact and conclusions of law. They're all dated July 23rd, 2024. Changes to any of these? Staff or board? No? Motion to approve, please?
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
I can second. I was planning to abstain from this vote since I wasn't at the July 23rd meeting.
Same with me, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I believe that this is true. Even though you are not here, you can still approve them, correct?
There's nothing that says you can't vote to approve a finding of fact, conclusion of law, just because you weren't present when that hearing occurred, but it's up to the board member.
So you're seconded? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Member Bescheid,
Yes.
Vice Chair Guida,
Abstain.
Member Degnan.
Yes.
Madam Chair, it has passed.
Matters from the public. Anyone in this audience wishing to comment on anything, please come forward.
Hear me. Stephanie Benanato. I've been looking around town, as you know, about for HVACs and other equipment on the roof. And I am compiling a little photo show for you. However, I just want to point out, because it's very close to here, you go over to Grant and at Johnson and look one building down at the O'Keefe Museum. On the second floor, it is very obvious and visible, an HVAC system that's probably 10 feet high. It's almost as high as the next building, which is right next to. It's completely obvious from this public street. I am not far away. I am like on the side of the building looking back. This is just one really blatant example of not screening equipment on the roof. And somehow it all goes past. And this is a lot of what's going on in downtown. I also wonder how long it takes to really do enforcement. We've heard about the so-called significant structure. I think it's 123 East Santa Fe Avenue that added on the white vinyl siding, like the oil and gas lobby had done to begin with. And it may take a long time to do this, to take them to court or do some kind of enforcement action, but I'm asking the board to consider reviewing the status and downgrading it from significant to contributing. And maybe that would at least help things be not so out of whack there. And also, I just have to say at the discussion last week, I really wish people were more factually based and less of, I heard this from somebody, but we don't know who and how many layers removed it was, and a lot of belief and a lot of emotion. And I know there was a lot of emotion and the emotion's real, but they weren't necessarily based on fact or on historic preservation principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else?
Can you turn on the microphone?
IT, please turn on the Elmo. There's an exhibit being shown on the Elmo.
Chair, board members of the Beach Board. My name is Rick Martinez.
Rick, can you speak right
yeah,
into
sorry,
that mic?
yeah.
Thank you.
Because I always think my voice is too loud. So anyway, my name is Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for giving me this time. I just wanted to hear, I know you guys can't do anything about this, but I just want to let you know that I know how you guys follow rules, that you have to, everything has to be approved about doing any work. Well, they really went ahead and did the red caboose at St. Francis Drive and Suez Road or the weekend or this past weekend. And they did it with no approval from the cities. So I don't know how they got away with that. They went ahead and did it. They changed the Zia symbol and wiped out the whole side and wiped out the other side of what was there. So it's kind of, it's a little disappointed. So I just want to cover a couple of little topics here. They claim it's Acapulco to Topeka railroad train caboose, but it's not. It's a Denver Rio Grande Railway caboose, because I have the paperwork and all that to prove that too. Anyway, the board member of Keep Santa Fe Beautiful says that they just wanted to get it back to mint condition and to historical status. Well, historical status is this. That's what it is. There is no that's what a historical status is supposed to look like. Then and this is the new look of the caboose. The Zia symbol is gone, and the Santa Fe there is, why do we have two Santa Fe's written on the caboose? You repeat it twice. That doesn't make sense to me. And they claim to bring it back to historical condition. So that is really not the way the logo is fine with me. I can live with the logo, but if you want to bring it back to mint to the way it was, take the other Santa Fe off, because it confuses everybody. But I know you guys can't do anything about it because it's not your preview, but it's just that I have to bring it up because you guys are historic. So I just want to bring this up to let you all know that this was an historic caboose. And I worked on it very hard, and to see it gone. And on the opposite side of the caboose, they left it blank. They didn't even fill it in. They didn't even bother with that. So it's kind of a loss from the other side to why they did that and why they did that. But my question is that why does somebody get away with doing something over the weekend and not get punished for it and go ahead and leave it there? So I know you guys don't allow that on your stuff, and I because if they want to bring it back to historic status, then they should really look out to what it is. And I figure you guys have a better voice than I do, because right now my voice is missing because they don't want to listen to it. It's muted, put it that way. But I thank you guys for your time to let me explain that. I think it's important to the way that citizens of Santa Fe are being treated by trying to do things. I did the train over at Salvador Perez and repainted that and brought it back to its normal condition. But, you know, it's a different world we live in now, different administration too. So thank you guys so much.
Oh, Rick, can you put the first one that you put up? That's the original. And is this the Keep Santa Fe Beautiful board?
Yes, this is the one, I got this one. I got this one. It's from a picture of what the real one looks, what a real Santa Fe, Acapulco to Topeka Railway, Santa Fe Railroad looks like. That's their design. That's what it should look like. So what they did is they added, once again, they added the Santa Fe, New Mexico in there. The Santa Fe, New Mexico came from me. So if I'm historic, then that's historic. Because when I first did the caboose, it had the Santa Fe, New Mexico with, and a different font too, with the Zia symbol next to where the Topeka logo is. So I just wanted to let you guys know that there's a big difference of it. I was gonna bring my original photo, but I'm sure all of you have seen that plenty of times, the way it used to look like with the Zia symbol and everything. But you know, this is what we have now, so you know, but why it has Santa Fe repeated twice, I don't understand. If they're talking about bringing it back to the historic status, they're completely off base.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Like I say, I thank you guys. I know this is not your preview. You guys don't need to look at this, but I needed a voice. So maybe you can spread my word that you're doing it wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Anyone else in this audience wishing to speak on any topic, reference H-board or preservation issues? There's not. Anyone on Zoom?
No, Cheerios.
Anything under staff communications?
Yes, Cheerios. We do have, we're gonna have an update, of a code rewrite. As you know, we're doing a code rewrite and Daniel Alvarado's here to give us an overview of the code rewrite.
Hello, members of the HDRB. It's my first time here. My name is Daniel Alvarado. I'm the senior planner who is the project manager of the Land Development Code Rewrite. I know some of you well, but others we haven't met, so thanks for having me here. Today I'm just going to give you sorry, it looks like, make sure.
Oh, thank you.
Today I'm going to give you a brief update on our status of phase 1 of the code update, as well as a very high level look at the proposed changes to the historic section, and then kind of what is to come in the future of this update project and the years to come. So this is more for the audience. If you want to see the draft, it is currently online on our website. You can also email us or otherwise contact me if you want to talk about the specifics, and that QR code will take you to the draft. I will put this up again at the end. So this is a much longer presentation than what I'm gonna give you tonight, so I'm gonna breeze through some of these slides. But I wanna go to here. So of course, you know what the Land Development Code is, but just for the general public, we are updating the development standards for the entire city of the Santa Fe, from your backyard shed to Sirius Road development. So this project can encompass a lot of things. This specific phase is going to has been focusing on creating a user-friendly document that's simpler to administer. And then we'll be moving forward with phase 2 and 3 that will actually be looking at new standards that will help implement the general plan. Okay, let's see here. So I want to just go through to the project timeline, because this will give you an idea of where we are. So like I've been mentioning, this is a 3-phase project. We are nearing the end of phase 1. We've gone through a lot of engagement, and now we have a draft of phase 1 that includes some changes to the historic district. I'm here tonight because the next historic district meeting, we will actually be bringing the draft to you for an official recommendation, which is a code requirement for any changes to the historic district code. And that recommendation will go to the governing body, which will find the, will actually adopt or not adopt the document. So that is why we're here. Again, phase one is really focused on some hygiene fixes, although there are some small substantive changes to both the code at large, but also the historic districts that we'll get into. Phase two will start in 2025. Is going to be much more about the substantive changes, creating new zoning districts, maybe changing standards. That's going to take a lot more robust engagement, and that's something we're going to be doing in concurrence with our general plan project, which is something that is going to be kicked off actually next week officially. And then phase three will be coming back around to actually implement the general plan through the code. So after the general plan is hopefully adopted, excuse me, in maybe 2026, then we can come back and actually look at changing the districts or changing the standards yet again to fit those policies. So there's a lot of bites at the apple. This phase, again, is just focused on trying to get a good foundation. This is why we call it LCD foundations, LDC foundations, and then moving forward to actually getting into the meatier items. So briefly, I just want to go over our engagement timeline. I'm not going to read all of this, but it starts all the way back in 2022 when we did some a line-by-line staff review of the code, and then a lot of interviews with city leadership and stakeholders. We officially kicked off the project in spring of 2023. Then we created what was called the assessment report, which identified a lot of the issues in the code, things that are both in phase one and also could be going towards phase two and three. Since then, we've been meeting with our working groups, and they've been our main engagement partners to actually draft the code and then come up with and give feedback on that draft. So we've had our technical advisory working group made up of technical experts like planners and engineers, our community advisory working group, which is community members, our historic subcommittee, which met 6 times to go over this draft, and that's definitely some of the members are here tonight. And then we also had a planning commission subcommittee to also look at this. So there's been a lot of eyes on this that are not just staff or the consultants that brought us here today. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been doing a lot of engagement. We released a public draft last month, and then we had 2 open houses, a planning commission study session, and some drop-in sessions, all to prime the public on what's to come with phase one and what's not in phase one, which is a lot of big substantive changes. So we want to make sure that everyone understands that the bigger questions are still to come, and that'll be part of phase 2 and 3 in the general plan. So our next steps is a pretty lengthy hearing schedule, and I won't go through each of these, but just give you an idea of where we are. Let's see. Pointer. So we are here October 22nd, or no, actually no, before that. We are before this, just giving you a quick introduction, but then next we'll be here on the 22nd to ask for your official recommendation. Of course, you'll be getting the draft before then. We also need an official recommendation from the Archaeological Commission, the Planning Commission, and then it can get introduced at governing body, hopefully by October 30th. Then we'll have to go through their public hearing process, which includes 3 different hearings, 2 subcommittee hearings, and then hopefully an adoption in December. So this is our ideal timeline, but it's not set in stone quite yet until we actually introduce the project or introduce the legislation to the governing body. So quickly, I'm going to go through some of the major changes to phase one. Obviously, I'm going to focus on the H district, and then I'll briefly outline some of the other changes that may be relevant to your work. So quickly, I'll just go through. This is a little exercise that actually Heather led to identify some of the goals of the H district subcommittee. You can see here, these are the goals that were identified for the entire project. This is not necessarily phase one. So priority number 1, protect Santa Fe style, make the code understandable, clarify the historic content, possibly look at rewriting his height ordinance. I think that's something that's like a much bigger, juicy item that would have to come in phase 2 and 3. I won't read all of these, but you can see this is sort of the starting point from which the historic subcommittee and staff jumped off to actually write the edits for phase 1. So this is just giving you a quick taste of what kind of edits are coming, and I know that's not exactly legible, but this is how the staff and subcommittee worked. They went through the draft line by line and either did line edits where they're just deleting and replacing things with more clear language, or they're doing structural changes where they're taking sections and moving them around to try to make the document less redundant and flow better, things like that. There's also been adding of definitions and other kind of hygiene types changes that they've polished through their meetings and over the last few months. The one substantive change that is coming out of this process is bringing forward recommendations from a 2004 draft of the H district section. So in 2004, Clarion Consultants, the same consultants that are working on our draft now, did a full rewrite of the H district. It was not adopted at that time for various reasons, but we did start by looking at that 2004 draft because it had a lot of work that went into it, and we wanted to see if any of it was still relevant to our current goals. Staff and the subcommittee felt that the district-specific standards in the 2004 draft were still relevant and something that we could bring forward in phase 1 of the code adoption. So that is going to be the most substantial change to the H district section that you'll see when you get the draft, hopefully next week. So throughout the process, they also identified numerous changes that we need to circle back on for phase 2 and 3. You can see here, this is kind of this is our comment section, and then there's also all of these footnotes. You'll see in the draft document a lot of notes about what was discussed, why we came to certain conclusions, and then where those conclusions may lay in the future, either phase 2 or 3. So that's the overview of the historic section. Now I'm just going to get into the general changes to the code so that you have an idea of the broader scope of the project. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because it's a long presentation, but I just want to show you a few top line items. So here is an example of what we're doing kind of code-wide by taking what's on the left, which is the current code, which is very text heavy, very dense, sometimes hard to penetrate, and hopefully making it a lot more user-friendly by adding graphics, tables, all kinds of new construction. Also, in the zoning districts particularly, we've changed it so that all the zoning districts are organized, they each have their own page, so that you can go to that page, say for an R5 district, and all of the standards are in one place, rather than having to hunt through the whole code. And this is going to help the usability a lot. And the same is going to apply for like the BCD districts, which obviously overlap with the historic districts. So this is more examples of the types of diagrams we've added. What else have we done? We are adding a parks and open space district. We've removed some of the restrictions on density in the R12 through R29 districts. Currently, you have to ask for a development plan, which is an arbitrary rule in our opinion, because other districts do not. So that's some of the kinds of changes that we're asking for in the zoning districts. Overlay districts. Obviously, historic is an overlay district, but it's sort of its own category. The other things that we've done is we've removed a few overlay districts that are not being used. We've removed a few specific regulations in some of the overlay districts, like the Airport Road Overlay District has some very specific rules around alcohol sales, which has been a roadblock to having new kinds of uses in that district, like grocery stores or restaurants. So those are some of the changes we're looking at there. Use regulations might also come into play for your work. We've added a lot of new uses that reflect new contemporary uses. So things like breweries, distilleries, doggy daycares, things that weren't in the code because they didn't exist 30 years ago. So those are some pretty easy, obvious changes that hopefully are non-controversial. We've changed the term special use permit to conditional use permit because we feel that better reflects the actual conditions that are put on those kinds of permits. Let's see, what else have we done? So, I don't think I need to get too deep into some of the development design. I do want to mention parking, though. There is significant changes or additions, I should say, to the parking section to allow more flexibility. Now, we haven't eliminated parking requirements or anything like that. We feel that that's a phase 2 thing. What we have done is added new flexibility tools to allow different developments to reduce their parking requirements if they show that that is not warranted. So things like letting on-street parking count towards their parking requirements. That would be a big one for the downtown district in particular. Changing some of the rules around off-site parking, defining what a parking demand study is, which was previously not defined. Allowing reduction in parking requirements by 20% if you're proximate to transit or trails. So there's more things like that, but that's giving an overview of the types of changes we're proposing. In addition, there are now new requirements for ADA and EV parking in the code, which was previously not the case. ADA, of course, was always required, but it was kind of, you had to reference a different document, so now it's in the code itself. EVs, charging stations are now required, and it's kind of like a percentage of the parking units required. Additionally, we've tweaked the bicycle parking requirements to decouple them from car parking requirements. So as we are looking at maybe lowering the car parking requirements, we're making sure that bicycle parking is still supported or even increased. And we've also added long-term bike parking for places like residential units that need e-bike parking and charging and things like that. Some other things that we've changed. So signs, this obviously comes into play in the H district. One big thing is that there is federal case law that says you cannot do content-based regulations on signs. So any regulations like that, we have to remove from the code. That's things like, say, you can't say, you shall not have a Merry Christmas sign in your window, because that's content-based. But you can say, you shall not have a sign that is 4 by 4 feet. And, that is form-based. So, so any sort of content-based regulations have been removed, and that's code-wide. Let's see. Administration and procedures, except for a few small instances, and I'll get to that, have not been changed, but they have been significantly restructured to make them hopefully much more user-friendly with some diagrams and tables and things like that. Okay, so I do want to mention the Affordable Housing Incentives Program. Oh, what happened here? Sorry. Hope that hasn't been off for a while. It didn't even.
Went off.
Okay. I think it's coming back. Oh. There we go. For some reason. Yeah. There it goes. Okay, sorry, I have to go back. Okay. Hopefully it'll stick with us. So as you may have heard, we are also proposing an addition to the Santa Fe Homes program. This is an incentives package that is not replacing the current requirement, that will remain, but there will be an additional incentive above and beyond the current package or their current program that is aiming to incentivize the creation of more affordable housing above and beyond the base requirement. So as you may know, currently you have to provide 20% affordable for sale units or 15% affordable in rental units. Excuse me. And if you do that, you'll get a density bonus as well as some other incentives. So this graphic here is meant to show kind of how that looks. So you have, if this is your base density, We're here. Let me give you this. If this is your base density, 20% of that has to be affordable, and then you get 15% market rate units as a density bonus. That is our current requirement. Under the new proposal, there are several different scenarios, but depending on how much affordability you provide, your incentive scales. So currently, if you provide 50% affordability, you don't get any more than 15% density bonus. Under this proposal, got a frog in my throat. So under this proposal, you would your density bonus would scale with the amount of that you provide. So if you're doing 30 to 39%, you get 1.5 density bonus. I'm not going to get into all the math of this because it can be quite complicated. But just to give you an idea of how that looks, so if this is the current, that's your base allotment, 6 of those would be affordable under this project, which I believe is 30%. Then you would get additional 9 bonus units. So this is working at affordability in 2 ways. It's adding more affordable units themselves, but it's also adding more supply to the supply in general. And so we're adding more market rate units, and then we're adding more affordable subsidized units. There's another slightly different way that we calculate for smaller projects, for small infill projects on R1 districts that is trying to create more of a compound style. Because the math works a little different at R1, the way it works here is basically if you do one affordable unit, you will get 3 density bonus units. So currently there is no requirement to do an affordable unit if you're just creating 1 unit. So there's no incentive to do affordability if you're building a single family home, for instance. But if you wanted to say have a second unit for a child or a grandchild, you could say, okay, I'm going to create an affordable unit for them, and then I get 2 density bonus units to cover the costs of building that affordable unit in addition to my existing unit. So it would allow somebody on an R1 plot, in this case 1 acre, to actually bring their density up to 4 units without changing their zoning. There are some additional incentives that go with this project. Again, if you do this above and beyond incentives package, you will get administrative review of development plans, as well as flexibility with dimensional standards, some fee waivers, things like that. Okay, so I know I just threw a lot of information at you. I could take questions now about the proposed changes, or I could quickly finish up and talk about what's to come. Which would you prefer?
See if any board members have questions?
Maybe we do questions at the end.
Okay. This will be pretty brief, but I just want to kind of contrast what is going to come in the future. So phase 2, as I mentioned, is going to be much more substantive. We'll be doing more engagement as part of the general plan and this project. So things that we can look at that will apply to you guys is, for instance, looking at where the BCD and historic districts overlap and maybe conflict, and see if any of those can be resolved, either by limiting certain standards because they trump one or the other anyway, things like that. Possibly increasing the amount of mixed-use districts, or changing districts into form-based code districts. Things that more kind of reflect the historic district, where we require a pretty stringent style guideline that enforces a Santa Fe style urbanism, as I like to say. Maybe we can look at creating other districts around the city that bring that kind of style out to other neighborhoods. Maybe not necessarily exactly like the historic district does, but as a template, or as a place to start. In phase 3, we'll be looking at, so what is the general plan telling us about growth in the city, and where does it need to go? That's going to be a major focus of that plan. So in phase 3, we'll have to come back and look at the zoning districts, and how do we align the zoning districts with the future land use map of the general plan, And that may impact the historic districts in some ways, but that's, that's a fair way out at this point, and that's going to require a lot more discussion. Same with overlay districts. Can we consolidate overlay districts? Can we get rid of overlay districts and replace them with better base zoning districts that do the same thing better or better? Things like the link overlay, which we think is a good template for other kinds of base districts, or maybe Midtown itself, which has kind of a form-based code style approach to regulation. Let's see. I'm going to keep going here. Architectural design review, that's something that is definitely going to be something up for debate in phase 2 and 3, both in the historic district and outside the historic district. Again, can we replace our points checklist with something that's more effective, like a form-based code handbook that's illustrated and a little more context sensitive, shall we say? That's going to be something that we can look at. Other things like reducing parking, maybe eliminating outdated regulations that we didn't get to in phase 1, et cetera. Looking at new administrative review procedures for certain cases. That's something that could help expedite certain projects. That's something that we've already proposing as part of the incentives package, and maybe that's something could come in future, could be expanded to other development activities in the future. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. So I will now stand for questions. Thank you.
First of all, Daniel, I want to thank you for your extremely thorough presentation. As everybody can see, and everyone heard, this is a very big project. It's going to affect all of us here in Santa Fe. It's a very involved project, and it's also a very challenging project for all of those that are involved in putting this together. And we have been waiting for this for a long time. I remember when the 2004, when Clarion addressed that at that time. So that's being used. And I've been involved in this at the committee stage. And they are really being thorough and trying to get, the public involved, and everybody will have a chance to speak, so that when that last stamp of approval is given to this project, that we have something better than we have now, something that is a lot clearer.
Thank you, Chair Rios.
Any other comments or questions, board members, this time? Not really? Okay.
Very easy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Or was it David?
Daniel.
It's Daniel.
It's Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have nothing under old business. And we do have 3 cases under new business. The first one is located at 330 Otero. And I see that the applicant is here, and Lanny will give us that report. Lanny?
I'm sorry, give me just 1 minute to get set up here. I'm all ready now. Good evening. This is case 2024-9127 for 330 Otero Street for window replacement. 330 Otero is located between Paseo de Peralta and Kearney Avenue on the west side of the street, behind the street-facing property on a private drive. The principal residential structure is designated as contributing. The east facade, including the portal, doors, and windows, and the southeast corner window are designated as primary. The accessory structure is designated as non-contributing to the downtown and east side historic district. The principal structure was constructed in the 1950s by builder Alan Stamm and retains its original footprint. The east facade includes the garage door opening, a small front portal and entry door, steel casement windows, a solid wood entry door, and a corner picture window. On the southeast and southwest corners, larger windows meet at the corners. All other windows on the structure are steel casement. The applicant proposes to replace the windows. Windows will have to be cut out of the opening and the wood sill repaired. However, the overall opening size will not be altered, and the windows will have the appearance identical to the existing windows, including the 4-inch inset. Windows will be painted in dark brown, and an exception is requested to section 14-5.2 D5B to remove historic material. They will also be repairing the wood buck underneath the seals and the sills of the windows to water seal the new windows, and stucco repairs around the windows to match the existing cement stucco in Adobe. The window assessment notes that the corner windows, C and D, and Unit A of the primary facade are historic but not restorable. Units E, F, G, and I of the non-primary facade are also historic but not restorable. And while Unit B is restorable, the applicant is opting to replace it, but is open to repairing it rather than replacing it if the board would prefer this. Staff finds that all the exception criteria have been met and recommends approval of the application as it complies with 14-5.2 D general design standards and for all historic districts, and 5.2 E downtown and east side design standards. Staff for questions.
Thank you, Lanny, for your report. What is the total number of windows that is requesting to be replaced? I can ask the applicant. You don't have that readily in your head.
Is it 10?
And you'll have to be sworn in, sir, so
Two, so that's
on.
2, 3. Yes, 10.
about 10 windows?
Yes.
Okay, and my next question, I'll just ask the applicant, or do you know why these windows are needing to be or wanting to be replaced?
The corner windows actually are leaking, so it's actually presenting water inside the building.
The corner windows and
Yes, the corner ones are in the worst condition of all of them.
any other questions or clarifications from Lanny? Member Guida.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lanny, is the garage door going to be replaced?
No, it's not part of this.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lanny. Applicant, if you'll come forward and get sworn in.
My name is
Please
Fritz
state
Denny.
your name and address for the record.
My name is Fritz Denny. My address for the house here is 330 Otero.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury? Thank you, Madam Chair. He has been sworn.
Good evening, Mr. Denny.
So
Please
all the
tell us.
windows are leaking. We've had to replace the back ones, but it wasn't.
And speak right into that mic.
All the windows are in bad shape except for the ones under the portal. I've been a builder in town for 50 years and they're metal windows, and we're trying to preserve the house basically and not change anything. It was my wife's dad's house and we want to preserve it and give it to our 3 sons. So that's where we're at. You know, I work at Habitat and at a repair program. I've been a carpenter, like I say. We're trying to, I guess the best word I could use is we're trying to keep the house from falling into ill repair. There are cracks happening, and there's the kitchen window, all the stucco is falling off the walls, and that's what was happening in the bedrooms. That was on the back side of the house. We did replace those windows 5 years ago or 3 years ago. And we set it up so that when we could afford to replace the whole thing and come to you folks, that we would use the same windows that matched as best we could the existing windows that are there. I think it's work that needs to be done, in my opinion.
Thank you. Let's see if board members have questions for you. Any questions or comments, board members? None at this time. Anyone that's in the audience wishing to comment on this particular project? Stephanie Bedonato's coming forward. She needs to get sworn in.
Hi, please raise your right hand. State your name and address for the record.
Stephanie Benato, PO Box 1601, Santa Fe.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Stephanie Benato. We now just learned that some of these windows have already been replaced. I hope then they have been replaced in kind and not something totally different. And we heard also that window B could be repaired and not replaced. It is historic. So I'm asking that at least that one window be required to be repaired. I think, of course, that corner windows, especially if it is, I mean, it can't be Adobe because I don't think you can have a corner window like that. But I think they're always problematic. And I hope that whatever material they use now, it'll work a lot better than the older material. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in this audience wishing to comment on this particular project? No one else. Anyone on Zoom?
No, Cherios.
Board members? Yes? Member Guido?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment, I guess, for discussion with the board. You know, Mr. Denny, I appreciate the level of effort that went into choosing a manufacturer that could replicate the light pattern and functionality of the existing windows on the house. It seems in the cases where windows have been replaced with Marvin windows, you've endeavored to do that. And in what's proposed in the packet today is a wood window, a clad wood window to replace these steel casements. This is not an identical like for like replacement. It's close. It's very close. And I really do appreciate that, you know, an effort has been made to, as closely as is possible with this type of newer window, emulate the STAM style of building, retain the corner windows, things that this board has noted in its statusing of the house as important to the structure and why we statused it. So I do appreciate that. That said, there are instances, you know, I mean, there are other products that could get a little bit closer to the STAM, to the steel casements that are there. They're extraordinarily expensive. And in light, and, you know, and there's even instances where this board has recommended retaining historic material in those steel casements and asked applicants to live with, you know, storm windows and all of that. I think on balance, and given that, you know, you have no obligation to do an exact in-kind replacement all over the project, what you've proposed here in terms of a preservation approach to this house, replacing windows that closely match the existing in terms of light pattern and functionality, is an acceptable response. And I think that you know, that acknowledging that there is some adverse effect, we're moving some distance away from what's there now, and there is a loss of historic material, is reflected in the request for an exception here. I'd be willing to grant the exception here on the basis that this represents, again, on balance, a good approach to the building overall, and not a kind of strict, let's just do you know, a restoration or expensive replacement where it's visible and do something else somewhere else. I think on balance, this is a good proposal, and I would support it.
Thank you very much for your comments, Member Guido. I happen to agree with them. I think the applicant has strived to make, to keep the look that is, this thing the city needs to make sure that this is working properly. This happened last time. But anyway, I think that it is a good project, and I think visually, what we see with what you are proposing is what will be consistent with what is existing. Any other comments or questions? Member Beecham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment on my initial thought was that we should lobby for the restoration repair of window B since it's on a primary facade. But I think I agree with the comments that my fellow board members have made about the consistency of the approach for the building as a whole, wholesale replacement with the wood clad window or the aluminum clad wood windows in total would be a better fit for the entire building rather than preserving one steel casement. So I agree.
And with that being said, is somebody ready to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion.
Remember, this requires an acceptance.
Yes. 2024-009-127 HDRB 330 Otero Street. I move that the board approve the project as submitted, agreeing with staff that the exception criteria have been met.
Beechide seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Bescheid?
Yes.
Member Guida?
Yes.
Member Dignan?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion has passed.
Thank you very much, and thank you, sir. Next case is located at 410 Camino Cabra. Is that applicant here? The applicant is here. Lanny, may we hear from you?
On my mouse. Sorry about that. Good evening. This is case 2024-9128 HDRB for 410 Camino Cabra for a demolition. .410 Camino Cabra is located just to the south of the intersection of Cristo Rey and Canyon on the west side of the street. The residence at 410 Camino Cabra is a pre-1948 single-family Spanish Pueblo Revival style residence listed as non-contributing to the downtown and east side historic district. The residence is 876 square feet with a very pronounced 400 square foot portal along the south and east elevation, which is publicly visible. In 1989, the HDRB approved the removal of the southern porch and reconstruction of the portal, replacement of windows and doors with fenestration alterations. Yard walls and residence were reviewed for status in January of 2024 and were confirmed as being non-contributing structures. The applicant requests to demolish the residential structure. The applicant plans to replace the demolished structure with a new residence, which is not currently fully designed. Staff finds that all the demolition criteria have been met. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the application with the condition that archaeological clearance is obtained prior to the demolition permit being issued per section 14-3.14D as it is, and then the rest of the application complies with 14-314 demolition of historic or landmark structures. This is currently the planned footprint for the replacement structure, which is not fully designed at this time. And I stand for questions.
But the replacement structure is not before us this evening, correct?
Correct.
We are simply looking at the demolition.
That is correct.
Any questions in reference to the demolition, board members? No questions? Anyone in this audience wishing to comment? Come forward, please.
About the applicant.
Applicant,
Oh,
Madam Chair.
excuse me. Yes, applicant or applicants? I'm getting ahead of myself.
Hi, please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Gayla Bechtel, 320 Aztec Street, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. I just want to get off this slide because we haven't designed this house. How do we get off? Just go to the next. Thank you. You can still see the outline of the proposed house with the house that's there now. I don't really have a lot to add. However, I do want to talk a little bit about the decision to ask for demolition as opposed to remodel. Because we could remodel this house, but then by the time we've remodeled this house, we've demolished this house because it is a non-contributing house. We could probably use the bricks somewhere, but in terms of every system that's in the house, structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, we've replaced everything. So I don't know, I'm sure you've seen houses where it's a complete gutting of the house. And by the time we've gutted this house in order to replace everything, it's a demolition. So that's why we're asking for a demolition. It's not that we don't like the house. It's just that by the time we got there, it would be practically demolished. So that's, I guess, that's our thinking behind this, because we could add on to it. It's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayla. Any questions for Gayla? No questions for Gayla. So now I will ask for public comment.
Stephanie Benanato. I see that the house is so much smaller than what's going to be proposed. What's proposed will take over the lot, and I understand the rationale. However, if it can be added onto and incorporated, then how are the demolition criteria met? And maybe there could be a little bit of discussion by the board about when a house could actually be added onto, but it just would be easier to demolish it. Again, what's the criteria for that? Has it really been met? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Hi, please raise your right hand and state your name and address for the record.
John Eddy, my address is 14 Avenida Campo Verde, Santa Fe.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that testimony you're about to, you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. Oh, I would like to see the board dig into this a little bit. It's not very often that an applicant comes to this board simply with we want to demolish this house, with very little explanation beyond the difficulty of building onto the house. I would like to see some question raised about the structural integrity of the house, which seems number one to me. If this house is completely structurally intact, then there's an argument for maintaining it. It's not something we do in Santa Fe very readily. Just
say, yeah, go ahead and demolish the house. I can see the need for a bigger house, as Ms. Beninato has said, and I can see an improvement in a lifestyle on that road. But I also think it is a non-contributing house, but sometimes these non-contributing houses add to the culture of that neighborhood and the character of that neighborhood. So I would like to see like to see you dig in on this a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else wishing to comment?
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Tom Wilmoth. I'm at 410 Camino Cabra, right next door.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury? Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board, Madam Chair. I'm really here primarily as a character witness. I don't have an opinion as to the demolishment or the addition. That's up to you, but I can assure you that I've known Stephanie now for a couple of years as her neighbor. I share a driveway with her. I'll be the most impacted person probably by this whole process, and I can assure you that whatever she chooses to do, she's going to do it the right way. I have great confidence in that, and I think you can rest assured that that'll be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak? Please come forward.
So I'm Stephanie Fine, current address 6609 Loma, Albuquerque. I'm the current owner of 410 Camino Cabra. I don't live there full time.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, board, for hearing our case. And I did want to make a couple of comments, mainly to address the previous comment. I have lived on and off there for a year and a half, 2 years. I've endured some very uncomfortable winters. I took my mother there for her last 3 months of her life. It was a very uncomfortable experience. There's no crawl space. It is concrete slab on dirt. The floors are the coldest I have ever stepped on and lived with. There's no insulation anywhere in the house. That said, I suppose that there are ways to improve that, but Gayla and I have spoken at length about, what are the options? What could we do here? What's best for the whole project, as a piece of integrity to the neighborhood. I think that the idea that we have is to just take the existing footprint, which includes the portal, and that would be the long part of the L, and then add a short leg L. There's a garage, which you cannot see on this drawing, at the very end, so it's not really living quarters. That's on the north side of the wall. And so the actual living quarters is not being extended by that much. And I think it would be a very sensitive project. I trust Gayla, I trust myself, and my love of Santa Fe. I grew up here, we moved here in the 70s. I love this town. I've always wanted to retire here. And this is kind of my dream house. It's less, I want the square footage to be, the living space to be under 2,000 square feet, probably about 1,800 square feet. That I feel is not overbuilding the lot. There is a structure, it looks like a new build, but I guess it wasn't really a new build. They built onto something across the street from us, which I feel, because I looked down on it, has been overbuilt. And I wish to avoid that look and retain a more historic sensitive look. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much for your comments. I always feel that it's really important for the homeowners to speak because you get a different perspective from them. They can have a representative, and the representative, of course, will speak for the owner. But when you hear from the owner, as we just heard, I think that's very beneficial. let me see if there's anyone else here in this audience that wants to speak in reference to this project. No one else? Anyone else on Zoom?
No Cheerios.
No one else on Zoom. Board members, I think Member Degnan has a question or a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree that one of the comments alluded to demolition being something that we don't particularly want to focus on this board. The D in HDRB is not for demolition. But out there today, when we looked at the property and the challenges, I did not ask, and maybe someone can answer this, how often do we demolish? Given the fact that it is not a contributing structure, certainly influenced me, but everything around it is quite contributing, so you want to make sure you honor that. Can anyone tell me, do we do this very often? I'm new to board, pardon me, I'm new, so I'm learning. Thank you.
Cheerios and Member Degnan. My recollection is it's not very often that it gets demoed. And lately we've been getting a lot of requests for demolition, but it hasn't been that much in the past.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, board members? Or comments?
Comment, Madam Chair. At least on my time on the board in the last 5 or 6 years, I think we've probably reviewed, north of 10 demolition cases, for houses, for outlying structures and stuff like that. And I think we've kind of looked at those cases very carefully. That said, I think I'm looking really at the criteria and the applicant responses here. I think a major one here, of course, is the status and whether it's contributing or not. It's not. It's been held up several times. Whether then subsequently this contributes to a streetscape or a block front, this doesn't. And then the rest of the criteria really depend on condition. And that consideration of condition and structural integrity has been, I know, on a number of cases, triggered by buildings that have been allowed to fall into repair, structural disrepair. And it was very obvious either from field trip or from a letter from a structural engineer. But it's more than just structural condition. And I think structural condition actually has a kind of broader meaning here. It doesn't necessarily have to be falling down to say that we approve this demolition request. I think the applicant has done a good job of explaining that the structural condition is not compatible with current building codes, and therefore the structural condition is an issue in that it would have to be effectively reconstructed here. Given the building that we're looking at, given all of the applicant's response and staff's agreement with them, I generally would agree that that it's prudent, for the sake of a home project on this site to tear this building down. Not really nothing is lost in that. And while we could reconstruct or retain the footprint or retain some aspects of the building, I think, the broader question is to what end. What's there is not great. I'm sure that the applicant and their architect could do a much better contribution to the district than either adding on to this existing building or retaining this existing building would allow for.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Member Beach.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just a few comments. Yeah, I of course hate to see things demoed without reason. So it is a careful decision we have to make. But this residence, there is a structural assessment, which indicates that the building is not to code. And there's some concerns with the way it was built without a crawl space and with CMU. I think in cases where, I mean, there's many houses built not to code that exist today, and in the renovations of those, it's usually a lot of effort put into bringing them up to code to protect what is worth saving, like Adobe construction or other elements that we deem characteristic in the historic districts. This one does not seem to have any of that. And I would hope that, and it sounds like the applicant is interested in recreating some of the characteristics, like maybe the Viga portals or, the look, maybe the color blue, retaining some of those elements that would harken back to what is interesting about this particular structure, but noting that it's not historic and does not add to the streetscape and is structurally compromised. I do agree with the applicant that bringing this up to code would effectively eliminate this building. So, comments?
Thank you for your comments. Any others? I just want to say that as Gayla knows, she's been here many times before, and other people within this room and people on this board, that we do have old buildings that are in pretty bad shape that are given a historic status, and they are renovated. So, and I understand both sides of this. Sometimes, as was explained this evening, there would be a lot of effort having to put into this particular building of having to redo the plumbing, the electrical, but in many old buildings, those things are accomplished and the building turns out to be wonderful. With that being said, this building was given first, the board evaluated, this board recently evaluated the designation of this building and decided that it did not contribute to the district. And at the time that that was evaluated, everything, the reasons for it not getting a status were explained that evening and gone through thoroughly, I would imagine. So with that being said, there's no further public comment. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. In case 2024-009128 HDRB at 410 Camino Cabra, I move to approve the application for demolition, noting that the demolition criteria have been met as documented by the staff's report.
Guido will second.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Bescheid,
Yes.
Member Degnan. Madam Chair, the motion has passed.
Thank you all. And the last case on the agenda is located at 544 Canyon Road. And is the applicant for 544 here? The applicants are here. Paul, this is your case.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for being here this evening. In case number 2024009129, HDRB, 544 Canyon Road is listed as a contributing structure to the downtown and east side historic district with the north and south as the primary designated facades. This structure was built on a 0.5 acre lot, and the original core structure square footage consists of 3,100 square feet approximate. Here's an overview photograph of the north elevation, which would be the north primary facade. Here we have the east elevation, which is non-primary. Here we have the south elevation as the primary facade, as well as the second story and portal.
And here we have the west elevation where this project is going to be located. Here we see on this west elevation by the entrance gate where the canopy is located and the double divided light windows is the applicant is proposing a 118 square foot addition, removing and closing off those windows and installing a doorway. Here is a 1966 aerial photograph of the development of the property given throughout time that we see today. The existing and proposed site plan. Here we see on the site plan the location on the western facade. Staff did review to make sure that the addition was set back 10 feet from the primary facade on given the north and the south elevations, and that they didn't exceed the original square footage of the historic footprint. Here we have the north existing elevation, no changes. Here we have the east existing, proposed no changes. Here we have the south elevation, and here you can see on the south elevation, on the bottom elevation, you can see where the new doorway will be installed on that western facade. And here we have the west elevation where they are extending that addition of 118 square feet, removing those windows and installing that doorway with the inclusion of a brick walkway and steps, which are already established there on the property. They look to restucco that addition with El Rey Adobe cementitious stucco. And again, here's a historic footprint overview showing the development of the property throughout time. The original core structure is over 3,000 square feet, built in the mid-1930s and does not require an exception. And here's the primary facade designations given previously this year from the board. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D, general design standards for all historic districts, and 14-5.2E, downtown and east side design standards. Staff stands for questions. Thank you.
Paul, what's the public visibility of the project?
Chair, Madam Chair, extremely low, if any, I would say. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? None? Applicant?
Sorry.
Oh, yes,
Thank you,
member.
Madam
Bichette.
Chair. Sorry, Paul, if I missed it. Is the window that's being removed historic, or was that previously replaced?
Madam Chair, Member Beachside, believe that window is historic. But I would let the applicant share more information on that.
Okay.
Applicant, please get sworn in.
Please raise your right hand, state your name and address for the record.
John Dick, 112 Camino Escondido.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. He has been sworn, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just before I forget it, the window in question that was just asked, it's non-historic. It was part of a 2013 remodel. So it's quite new. I don't have too much to add to what Paul has presented. It's a very modest addition to a den. The existing den is very small and hardly functional other than maybe sitting by a fireplace. And so they wanted to create a larger den with a TV and make it more of a functional space. And so the 118 square feet is maintaining the existing width of the den and just extending south up to, as Paul pointed out, the 10-foot restriction to the primary facade. the height of the parapet will match the adjacent lower parapet of the entrance into the mudroom, into the kitchen. The new door will essentially replicate the character of the door on the west facade. So it's just in keeping with the overall character of what's there now. So it's, you know, from the standpoint of the overall size of the original house, which I think you'd all agree is quite wonderful. It's maybe a little over 3.5% increase in square footage of the footprint. So it's a very modest addition to try and increase the functional character of that one room.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dick. Any questions for the applicant? Questions for the applicant? Anyone in this audience wishing to comment on this particular project? No one? Anyone on Zoom?
No, Madam Chair.
Board members, I will entertain a motion, please.
I move that we approve the staff recommendation to install a door, given the fact that the applicant's representative has indicated very clearly that it will be very similar in material and style and appearance to the other opening that you referred to.
And do I hear a second?
Each I will second, just noting that this is in reference to case 2024-009129 HDRB at 544 Canyon Road.
Thank you.
Thank you, member.
Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chair Guida,
Yes.
Member Biesheuch,
Yes.
Member Degnan.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion has been approved.
That was easy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the house is lovely. Anything under discussion items? Anybody? Staff? No? Yes, Heather.
Thank you, Chair Rios. Just a quick update for the general plan update. The consultant team will be coming to town next week, and we are initiating the update of the digital platform so that it's a more user-friendly platform that both the development community as well as the community at large can use to find more information, better information. An example is being able to pull off a fee off of the digital platform, so you don't have to ask a member of staff or do a public records request. So that way it's more self-service and accessible 24/7. So we're really excited about the development of that platform. I'll be bringing that to the board just for some feedback in the future as that progresses. And also just to let you know, we will be starting the engagement process for the general plan in 2025. But we're hoping that both the general plan update and the land development code update can fold together a little bit, because there have been a lot of general plan questions that have been raised with the land development code update. So it's a really great opportunity, very rare that you have these two projects going at the same time. So, so anyway, we are just starting that process. The other project that we're working on is a historic district status map update. You know, I was looking at one of the projects and, you know, the status would change, but it's not changed on the digital platform, and hasn't been changed since the status map was created back in the 1990s when I did it. So we have done a lot of work in those 20+ years. So that will be coming before you for review and approval in the near future.
Thank you for that, Heather. Anyone else on staff wishing to comment on anything? And matters from the board? Anybody? Everybody's anxious to go home.
May I make a comment, Madam Chair?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to know Ms. Limboy's secret, because if she worked on something in 1990, she must have been 12. And I'd like to know her secret. Will you tell me later? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next meeting is going to be on October the 22nd, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Each seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Biche? Vice Chair Guida?
Yes.
Member Degnan?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. And you can still go entertain.